Alright, we're back with another one. And yeah, after looking at the last Republicans feedback, I will try things a bit differently. We'll have a bit more structure, and I guess with Exploration B's reflection, there is a clear guide for this. So I can try to put up subtitles for each topic I'm discussing as they come up, or as they seem relevant. This is actually the second take. Whew, the first one ended up being so long. Too much rambling and going around in circles. So with that out of the way, let's just get right into it. So this reflection one was pretty loaded, a lot of material to sort through. And I want to start by answering the first part that says, analyze your experience by connecting it to the articles you have chosen to read and the videos you have chosen to watch this week. So the first video that I want to stop by and look at is the one by, let's see, Bassama Benadi about reclaim Muslims as the protagonist. So I thought there was a lot of really good pieces here. He focused on the idea of like the otherization, and its kind of exclusive effect it has on Muslims in, I guess, Western education systems. His idea was to focus more on Muslim experience versus Islamic beliefs, which I thought was pretty interesting, because Muslimism is like, you know, it's a religion that's been around for quite a long time, and of course people have changed also over time. So it's interesting that he wanted to focus more on people's experiences as Muslim as opposed to like the actual core beliefs. It's an empathy-based approach rather than solution-based, and yeah, to focus more of Muslims as the protagonist of their own stories, as opposed to being like antagonistic. Yeah, because labels are relative and do not accurately describe the people being discussed in any given time. So the reason why I chose this one to kind of talk about first was that, alright, so here's the story. This is where we kind of go. And ties into this week's readings as well. So in my country of Indonesia, majority, like the statistic is like 90% of the population is Islamic or identifies Muslim. And back in the day, there used to be, there still is a personal identification card, and on that card it used to state your religion. And of course, people who identified as Muslim could just have, you know, Muslim written on their personal identification card. Nowadays, that's not the case. Like these new cards, they don't have that. That's not a field to be written on. It is not even like a, yeah, it doesn't let, I guess they don't let you, but it's not part of the card anymore. So what I want to bring this to, or how I want to relate this, is that it came to the readings for this week in the Chelsea Vowel about status and how does one have Indian status? What qualifies you as having this? So, with the situation in Indonesia back in the day, people could self-identify as Muslim, and they would have that on that card. Now, I don't think it imparts like specific statuses. I think that's just a field. But you know, people were still able to identify as Muslim as part of their identity, right? Literally, it's part of their identification card. It's written there. Now, with the status card of like the Indian in Canada, you have to jump through like, you know, several hoops and you have to qualify, you have to apply for it, and it seems like an arduous process to prove that you are Indian enough to have an Indian status. Now, this, from what I see, the qualifications or prerequisites to being a status Indian are imposed by the early settlers, the early government, and they told the indigenous peoples what it means to be a status Indian. Okay, they set a bar to identify as what it means to be an Indian. that's like directly, from what I see, taking away the power from the indigenous peoples to like identify as who they are, just to be able to self-identify. They have to adhere to certain parameters that the government set up. So obviously it's not a reasonable way, because what it means to be an Indian or indigenous, it goes way beyond that, right? But the thing is with this Indian status is that it imparts certain benefits and entitlements that is, provided by the government. So without the status, you don't have these like benefits or breaks, right? And that's kind of wrong, isn't it? So I want to go to this model I kind of created. I call it the, what did I call it? I call it the, for systemic injustice, which I feel like the Indian Act kind of is. I call it the foundational, I call it foundational Jenga. Okay, so Jenga is like that game where you kind of pull blocks from certain parts of the building, of the tower, you stack it on top of each other as you go up, and it becomes more and more unstable. So what I envision a lot of systemic injustice as is, like, imagine a foundation, kind of like, imagine like planks, or like Jenga planks, right? Like little blocks. Like one Jenga at the bottom. And then as the system kind of evolves and grows over time, you kind of stack more Jenga that goes outwards, and like it kind of expands horizontally and vertically. Kind of like in the shape of like a really messy upside down pyramid, all built on one little foundational block. As we get bigger and bigger, time goes on, it gets more and more shaky, more unstable. It's a mess at this point. And this is how I see certain systems that are in place. As soon as you take out like one crucial part, or you try to like, change anything, let's say you take out the very bottom of my foundational Jenga pyramid, the rest of the stuff will just come down crashing and cause all kinds of chaos, right? That's kind of how I see what the Indian Act is, and a whole bunch of other different systems that are just systemically not just. As soon as we try to change the bottom, everything that's built on top of it will kind of crash, it'll not work, there'll be lots of chaos, catastrophe, a lot of things that you just wouldn't know how to handle because it's so ingrained into the system. So, where was I going with this? Yeah, the Indian Act to me is the way I see it is like, it's a system that definitely needs to be kind of rectified, but because it's so like relatively old and ingrained, it has so many changes and like stuff done to it, it's really difficult to kind of really pick at the foundation of it and just change it, because if you do, all the benefits and like that come with being a status will also be like, I guess messed up along the way. Like it'll just collapse, and that's like not necessarily good either. So like it's a struggle to kind of change this system. So this kind of leads me to the next point. Consider the implications of this exploration for your own development as an educator. So now we go into this week's theme of teacher activism. Okay, what are ways that teachers or teachers in training like ourselves at this point can we kind of advocate change in certain aspects and certain avenues for students and for education? So again, the educational system, it might also be a foundational Jenga. I don't know too much about it, but based on what we've learned, there's so many systems in place that date back in like all the way from like European educational standards, and also now I guess nowadays is Western educational standards. It can also be a foundational Jenga. I have always struggled to see how we could solve these Jengas, and maybe like this teacher activism could be a way. So if the foundational Jenga is like kind of a built up upside down pyramid that's a giant mess, what if instead of like, maybe we don't like really, we start taking things away from the upper parts and kind of maybe build a new foundation. Maybe. This might be a paradigm moment. We don't have to, like, there's still, I still believe that there are parts of Western education that do have value, and we don't need to take away, like, every single thing. Maybe we just leave in, like, the good things, right? Who knows what those good things could be. And we just start building a new foundation. And we do this through advocacy. So I want to visit, let's see. Yeah, one of the videos, this road is made by walking by Lori Driussi. And the main the main message I get from that is the kind of, we have to start somewhere. This road is made by walking. We have to start somewhere. We have to build this road of acceptance and inclusion ourselves. We have to, the intention and impact, those are two things that we really need to have as a form of advocacy inside our classrooms. Let's see here. Yeah, so she mentioned a really big part of allyship, ally to marginalized peoples and groups, while not being a part of them. That's a really key message. I think that really helps with being inclusive. So that's something that is really good to foster within a classroom, that I would definitely want to advocate to future students, is to, hey, look, like, you might not identify as so-and-so, but I think you can always still be a friend or an ally towards that. Right? Be really accepting that you may be different, but we're still all in this boat together, right? We're all just trying to learn, and we're trying to get through whatever it is that, we are working towards. Oh, wow, I actually wrote a lot on this. Yeah, like, the ways that success are portrayed, teachers as an agent of change. Yeah, so again, it's a start, right? We set an example by taking the road ourselves, and that which brings me to my next point. The video entitled "The Audacity of Representation" by Aniana. I love this piece, actually. So she took us into her classroom, and she said, like, what she teaches are all over her walls, right? But obviously the walls are, like, it's a construct. The teaching goes beyond the walls. But, she can post her views and her ideas of what she wants to teach on her wall. So teachers can, or no, it's not teachers, well, teachers as well, students in her classroom can, like, look around all over the walls and see, like, oh, what is she about, right? They can look around and question everything. It gives them a chance to kind of, develop critical lenses, which actually is a strong belief. I believe a lot of problems could be solved if everyone just used more of their brain, thought more critically. But different story. Anyways, yeah, she always used the cliche, practice what you preach. I am a big follower of that. I also believe that. Of you teach who you are. And that's always something that's always going to be with me, that I've learned through this entire Education 400. Really powerful quote I will always use. And this teacher, she obviously teaches who she is and what she believes in. So she'll have all kinds of all kinds of different posters and messages posted all around her classroom. Yeah, she says she encouraged us to push the boundaries, make the school a place of positive change. And it's really good to hear that she is so supportive of this movement of teachers being advocates or activists, to really, I guess, go against the grain and face the backlash. Ooh, that's kind of a scary thought for me personally. But you know what? It's really empowering to see her do this in her classroom, and know that she is supportive, and she says, like, teachers have each other's back on this kind of activism, which, again, I think is steps towards fixing that foundational Jenga, either by making a new foundation or taking away pieces from the whole mess and make it less unstable. And hopefully we can build towards a more stable, a more inclusive system of education. Yep, so I want to move on to the final section of this. It says, develop a personal definition of teacher advocacy or teacher activism based on your exploration. Does your definition apply equally well to teachers as it does to those working in community settings? Why or why not? Okay, so based off what I've watched, there's some really interesting ideas. So just looking at, I'm just gonna keep name dropping at this point. The Youth Justice Lab by Anne-Marie Perrin and Emma Mendez. From what I gather is that they try to hold a space for students to discuss Indigenous struggles and social justice. They host Indigenous rights and voices through presentations and discussions, and that this work cannot be done in isolation. Okay, and the pretty powerful quote here: restorative justice is a compass to creating that space. So it's about educating and creating a safe space for these discussions to take place. Of course, that's something that I want to strive for. Is creating that safe space, and it all leads to my kind of main mission statement of, as a personal definition of advocacy. And you've probably heard this so many times, but it's about student empowerment and inclusion, letting students know that they have the right to be who they are. And I can't remember whose video this came from, but it was like a good teacher will identify their students' strengths. So again, I want to move towards empowering students to be able to be who they want to be, or who they should, who they believe they want to be. And now here's one of my inner struggles with this. I am a firm believer that I don't feel like I want to tell students they should believe certain things directly, right? I think the goal is to help them arrive at their own conclusions themselves. So, and that's gonna be my struggle, is how to guide them on that path to self-discovery. Because it's one thing to say like, hey, racism is bad, don't be racist, do not discriminate, don't do this, don't do that. It's, just, again, you're just saying it, right? And I think most people nowadays, it would agree that like bigotry is not acceptable. It isn't, right? But I think it's also important for students to be able to realize that upon themselves, as opposed to me just convincing them that bigotry is awful, as an example. So again, I feel that I have to find ways to guide students towards these things, because I remember it was discussed very early in our PLC that it's difficult to impart like no bias into our teaching, but it's impossible to avoid because of the values that we have. And again, you teach who you are, and that includes our values. So how can we get students to where they need to be without imparting too much of that invisible hand upon them? And I think that's something that I have to definitely work towards in the future. I'm not sure what the answer is, but the point is, let's answer the last question. Student empowerment and inclusivity. Just be nice. We're always in this together. We're always learning. We share the same space. I think everyone has the right to the opportunity to learn, not just the subject material, but also like who they are and where they want to be and how they fit into this whole, the whole world. So we'll leave it at that. I hope that So this is going to you, Robin, mainly, I guess. Hopefully that suffices. I tried to include what I could. Let me know how it goes, and yeah, that'll be it for this reflection.